Okay, so there are few prerequisites for Vue.js, which almost every IT professional knows, especially who just passed out their colleges, right? So it's like HTML, CSS, right? Basic JavaScript, right? And few design skills like some JavaScript features you can learn from anywhere. So these are very basic prerequisites which we need to know before we start Vue.js, right? So there are few ways, like 3 or 4 ways by which you can start, working with Vue.js, like installation parts, right? So there are 3 parts, right? So suppose you have an existing application and you want a few, some parts of your application, some blocks or application rendered by Vue.js, then you can just start importing Vue.js like script tag, script and do the CDN URL of Vue.js, and you can start using Vue.js from there for an existing application. But if you want to build a single page application, like by installing it, like some package manager tools like yarn or npm, you can just do npm install and give the specific version or any latest version of Vue.js, which can be installed in your application independently, and you can start working on that as well. There are few other ways like white or and maybe a few more tools which can be used to install an independent application or single page application, which can be used for doing this. Okay, setting up with CLI. So there are few commands which can be run, right? So before running those commands, we need to know about the package managers, right? So package managers are something which provides the modules, the pre-built modules which is available in the package manager libraries, right? So there is npm node package manager, and there is another one is yarn, right? So they do the same job, they just import or include the node modules into your current project, right? So first you need to install the Vue CLI. So for installing it globally, like on your system, you have a command which says yarn global add Vue/CLI, right? So by doing this, Vue.js will be globally available on your current system, on your current user, right? And then the next command, when you do this, then you can, so now you will be able to run the Vue as a command. When you install this CLI, after installing it, you will be able to run the Vue as a command, right? So next command would be Vue create and a respective folder. So suppose there is you want to create some project XYZ, right? So you can put the name of your folder after Vue create and that folder name, right? So it will create a folder with that name on your system wherever. So suppose you are on documents folder, right? So on cmd, on command prompt, you go to the documents and type these commands. So that will create another folder there with the name of xyz, right? And then you need to go inside that folder. So you do as you see on the screen, right? You do cd and that folder name. And for running the Vue project, you need to do yarn serve, right? So if you are using yarn, then you need to do yarn serve, but if you are using npm, then you need to do npm run serve, right? So that will now run your project on your browser. So default port for Vue is 8080, but that can be configured. Right? We will cover those port configuration and other stuffs in other video. So when you do this and all these commands are completed, you see a folder. That folder contains node modules, a public folder, and a src folder, and few other property file like yarn.log and package.json, etc., right? So but those, we are not going to focus on those for now. We just need to know how the file structure works. So anything which you do install with yarn or npm goes inside node modules. So suppose you need to add some other library for routing. So if you want to install, create your routing with with the help of Vue.js, you need to install a supporting library, right? So that called Vue routing. So you need to install it. So when you install it, it goes inside node modules. And then there is another folder is it's called public, right? The public folder is, as by its name, it's a public folder where things are all publicly accessible, right? So any assets like favicon icons or some images or maybe some static videos or anything you want to put on public folder which can be accessed by all the users publicly, so you can put those files there. And src folder, so src folder is most important folder where we do our coding, right? So src folder is where our workplace is, basically where we do our stuffs. So inside src folder there is a entry file, right? So as any of the programming language, there is always a entry file. So like in html you see index.html, right? In other language like php and others, you will find index.php, or in javascript it also can be index.js, right? But that can be customized as well. Okay, so before going to coding part, we need to understand the public folder as well, right? So we did discuss few parts of the public folder like accessibility, assets stuff, but the first page which renders on the browser, that is also comes inside the public folder, that is index.html, right? So index.html basically keeps the all the DOM structure itself, right? So like html tags, header tags, body tags, even your document root where your application initialized at the first, right? So that those all stuffs are inside index.html, right? And now we will go and see our first JavaScript file, which is eventually automatically created by Vue.js itself, that we call main.js, right? So main.js is the entry point for JavaScript, and the JavaScript index.html is the entry point for web browser, right? So we have two entry points, one for web browser and another one for JavaScript. So main.js where our application get initialized, we need to add a document root, right? On which element we need to initialize the application. So as you have been seen, we had a div which we have given an id of app, right? So this is our application root, right? So application root element we can say. So that is where our whole DOM is going to be rendered by Vue.js. Okay. All right, and now we will see another file which we can say a component file, right? And now it's a view extension file. So .vue extension file is similar to an HTML file, right? We have three type of building blocks inside that file. First is script, where we first is template, where we write our HTML, right? And second is script, where we write the logical codes for Vue.js, right? Vue.js logical codes, where we write our logics or initialize the data, which later on will be used by the template or consumed by the template, right? And the last block of code is style, right, where we style our components. That particular building block where we use to style this, right? Okay, so as we know, maintainability of the code is a big concern uh, for every developer, right? We always have to write something which can be maintained easily maintained, right? So for maintaining those things and for also increasing the reusability of those chunk of codes or maybe components, right? We used to create small files, right, which we can which we call components. So in this library, like others, like in this framework, the Vue.js, like other frameworks like React or any others, or maybe Angular, we we have been seen there are structures like modularized. We used to keep our code modularized, right, where we create uh, components, we create helpers, we create small util files, right, where we keep our code organized. Okay, so as you see on template, we used to render our data, right? Or our data, when I say, like, so suppose you have to show a list, right? A list of employees or maybe a list of courses. So you need to define that data or that logic inside that uh, data block, right? That Vue.js component file, inside the Vue.js component file, there is a JavaScript block, right? As I said earlier. So inside that, we have a data property where we need to define our data, which later on will be consumed by the templates. Okay, so as I said earlier, Vue.js is only do the user interface building, right? So it doesn't actually do anything else, just user interface building. So what we should use, like how we will create the templates, how we will create the routing or any other state management libraries, right? Like how we manage the states, how we save the data on your application locally. So for doing state management, right, the complex state management, we can use Vuex store, which is as similar as Redux. If you, any of you have any idea of using Redux or any other statements libraries, right? We use Beautify for do the HTML part, right, where you can import the built-in components. You can use their CSS, their packages, right? And routing, for routing we can use view routing, right? So if you need to create the multiple pages, so suppose we, as I said, there is just one main index file and there is another app.js, right, app.view file. But what if you need to create a few more files, few more pages basically? So you need to have something which can route you to on a new page. So for routing and other stuffs, we use a Vue router. Okay, so if you guys have any doubts so far, you can ask, right? We can also, yeah. So component, as I said, we create a small files for the reusability purpose, right, where we can manage and maintain our code easily. So we write a small chunk of code, and later on we use that chunk of code into our application, right? So what happens there, so suppose, let's just take an example, right? So suppose you have a custom drop down, right? So drop downs are something which can be used on any of the forms, right? And it does only one job. It gives you few options and you can select just one option out of those, right? So if we create that drop down as a component, so we can use it everywhere, so that becomes reusable, right? So suppose and also maintainable. So suppose you got any issue with that drop down, or later on some point of time you want to change some style, or maybe you want to enhance something into that your drop down of yours, right? So you just need to go on that particular file and make the adjustments, and that adjustment will be available on all over your application, right? So application wide changes. So components are basically used to uh, building blocks, right? Used to build your websites, you build your application and manage your application into chunks. Okay, so anyone else want to ask anything?
Yes, sir, one question.
Okay.
Sir, yeah, I have seen that file package.json. May I know what it is used for?
So package.json is basically a file where we define our whole application, right? The name of the application, the required packages of the application, all the dependencies related things which will be defined in package.json. So package.json is basically being created by Vue CLI itself, right? So when you initialize or when you run the command, these files will be automatically created, and later on you can make the adjustments, like add the dependencies or any other dev dependencies inside that file, and that helps to complete your project.